Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to those who are joining us from Singapore, Japan, and Asia. And good morning or good evening to all of you joining us from other parts of the world. Thank you for being here with us for today's online event on Deep Tech for a Resilient and Sustainable Economy, presented by SGInnovate and the Japan Science and Technology Agency, or JST. This event is held in conjunction with Science Agora 2020, an annual dialogue organized by JST to promote conversations on science and society. My name is Jin from SGInnovate, and as a Singapore government-backed investor, we have been building up and driving deep tech innovations in AI, healthcare, quantum tech, food and agri-tech, and autonomous technologies across various industries. At SGInnovate, much of our work is to connect Singapore with the global deep tech ecosystem to explore the impact of science and technology in making our future economy and society better. Today, we have our panel of experts and thought leaders from Singapore and Japan to discuss how we can capitalize on innovation and corporate startup collaborations to help improve the lives of all and work towards a resilient and sustainable economy. We encourage you from the audience to engage with our speakers during the session by submitting your questions in the Q&A box located on the lower panel of your screen. Before we start the session, I would like to invite Emmy from JST to give us a quick introduction about their work. Emmy, please.
Thank you, Jane, for your kind introduction, and thank you everyone for attending today's seminar. I'm Emi Kaneko, Director of Singapore Office of Japan Science and Technology Agency, or JST in short. JST is a funding agency which supports research activities and social application of research outcomes in Japan. You may also know JST as the organizer of Science Agora, which is the platform for people from different sectors to discuss science, technology, and innovation. This is the sixth webinar we're organizing with SGInnovate, and the first one in conjunction with Science Agora. Singapore is a country which has transformed itself to be a startup nation over a very short period of time. And Japan is a very innovative country with a huge number of firms which invest quite heavily in research and development. Our two countries may be different in some aspects, but I believe we have a common goal that we want a resilient and sustainable future for a sustainable economy for future generations. I'm quite sure we can learn a lot from experiences and insights of the panelists and moderator for today. So without further ado, let me pass it on to today's moderator, Mr. Shen-Hui Tan from SGInnovate. Shen-Hui, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Emmy and Jin, for the introduction. To all our attendees, a very good afternoon, and thank you for joining us again once again for today's online panel on Deep Tech for a Resilient and Sustainable Economy. As mentioned, my name is Xian Hui. I'm the Executive Director for Investments at SGInnovate, and it's really my pleasure to be the moderator for this fascinating panel. Before I begin, I think I would just like to reiterate Jin's earlier message to remind all of you that you can enter your questions into the Q&A section, which is located at the bottom part of the screen. Following the panel, I will hopefully be able to pose all your questions to the panelists so that you'll be able to get a reply to them. So with that, let's get started. Before we dive into how deep tech may support a resilient and sustainable economy, it's perhaps worthwhile to align ourselves on what a resilient or sustainable economy actually means. When doing my research for this panel, I found both an academic definition as well as perhaps a practical interpretation of what this definition is. The academic viewpoint is that a resilient economy represents a holistic approach which includes a wide range of concepts and frameworks that are tightly connected to the progress of human society and the economy in general. But perhaps a more pragmatic view was expressed by Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Heng Swee Keat, on the 5th of October, where he outlined a plan for a resilient Singapore economy that would need to be more self-sufficient in the areas of essential food production and medical supplies. At the same time, with a future that was likely to be resource constrained and the focus on low carbon solutions, sustainability and adopting energy efficient technologies and seeking new business opportunities in the green economy was going to become more and more important for Singapore. So it is really with this in mind that I'm honored to have the three distinguished speakers on today's panel to share their views on how deep tech can contribute towards a resilient and sustainable economy. In no particular order, I'd like to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Tan Si-Hui. She's the Chief Science Officer of Horizon Quantum Computing. Si-Hui has a PhD in physics from MIT. She joined Horizon Quantum Computing shortly after its inception to pursue the ambition of making quantum computers a reality for everyone. At Horizon, she heads the research development and helps to oversee daily operations. Prior to joining Horizon, she worked as a research scientist, initially at A-STAR's Data Storage Institute, and subsequently at the Singapore University of Technology and Design and the Center for Quantum Technologies. Si-Hui has published extensively in top physics journals, including Physical Review Letters and Physical Review X, and in well-known conference proceedings such as the IEEE Information Symposium on Information Theory and the SPIE International Symposium on Optics and Photonics. Our second speaker is Mr. Setsuo Yuichi, Senior Vice President and Executive Director of Hydrogen Business at Chiyoda Corporation. Mr. Yuichi-san started his career with the government of Japan in 1983 at the then Ministry of International Trade and Industry, now the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, or METI, in various roles in planning and policy making. He joined Chiyoda Corporation in January 2018, first as a senior advisor, then senior vice president and executive assistant to the president. In April 2020, Yuichi-san was appointed executive director for Chiyoda Corporation's hydrogen business and successfully executed the world's first international hydrogen supply chain project, which commenced operations on the 26th of June 2020. And last but not least, Dr. Mohammad Farhani, CEO and founder of Setpure. Farhani has a PhD in chemical and biomolecular engineering is so complicated that's even difficult for me to pronounce, from the National University of Singapore. He's the founder and CEO of Setpure, a Singapore-based startup that provides sustainable solutions to industrial chemical separations. Recently, Dr. Farhani's innovation at Setpure has been recognized by the MIT Technology Review, and he received the prestigious title of Innovator Under 35. His research over the past 9 years has resulted in 2 patents, more than 20 peer-reviewed articles which have been cited over 850 times, 2 book chapters, a book, and many international presentations and talks as invited and keynote speaker. So I've told you a little bit about our speakers today, but now I'm going to get them to share a little bit about what their companies do and how their companies plan to tackle this issue of economic resilience and sustainability. Perhaps I would like to invite Yuichi-san to perhaps say a little bit about what Chiyoda Corporation is doing and more on the project that he's engaged upon. Yuichi-san.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. And my name is Yuichi from Chiyoda Corporation. And thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, Chiyoda Corporation was established in 1948, more than 70 years ago. And we are one of the leading EPC contractor, especially of the energy plants like oil, petrochemical, or LNG. And at the same time, we have been building equipment for water treatment or desulfurization of oil plant and so on, which says it means environmental protection facilities. So our corporate philosophy is energy and the environment in harmony. And in recent years, we have been expanding our business in the renewable energies, such as building mega PV or biomass power plant or biofuel plant or a huge scale battery storage and hydrogen. And in terms of hydrogen, we have developed a new catalyst by which we can store and transport hydrogen in the form of very stable liquid under ambient temperature and pressure. And now, as introduced, we are now doing the demonstration project to carry hydrogen from Brunei, Dar es Salaam, to Kawasaki, Japan, in the form of the chemical liquid. We call it spera hydrogen. It's a substance called methyl cyclohexane, and it's very stable, and like used in the correction fluid to correct miswriting as you use. So it's very not toxic and non-explosive. So we carry hydrogen in the form of that liquid. Now we are successfully doing the demonstration project and now trying to expand our business to the world. And so that's kind of our business is, in a sense, adapting ourselves to the sustainability. And as for the resilience, I think from the business viewpoint, it's very important for us to adapt to ourselves to the social agenda. And for example, in the terms of hydrocarbon, we kind of moved from oil to natural gas. Our main target is now LNG project and natural gas, and at the same time, renewable energies. So we are now moving our resources gradually to the renewables or sustainability issues. So that's our viewpoint. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ichi-san. Perhaps Si-Hui, you can go next and tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Horizon. Sounds fascinating.
Thanks, Yin-Hui. Well, in many ways, sustainability and economic resilience is about continued growth in the face of constrained resources and adversity. So at Horizon, we work on quantum computers. Quantum computers are potentially disruptive technology for aiding this type of growth in many industries, thanks to an exponentially faster calculation capacity. And as we all know, the pandemic has only increased a demand for computation. However, gaining a performance increase using quantum computers requires deep expertise that is fundamentally different from conventional computing. So at Horizon, we are tackling this head-on by building software that bridges the gap between quantum computers and conventional software development. For that, we are developing a new generation of programming tools to simplify and expedite the process of developing software for quantum processors without any prior quantum knowledge.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Is that all? I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, it's okay. It's okay. I just want to add on that the potential of quantum computing is that it can ultimately make possible complex engineering and scientific simulations that can reduce the need for on-site experiments in special facilities, such as wind tunnels and chemistry laboratories. And this will cut down resources for running the facilities. And in the world where we are all working from home, and more people will be, is an added advantage. Thank you.
My apologies for interrupting you just now. Very ungentlemanly of me.
Okay.
Farani, over to you. I mean, we saw your video clip just now before the start of this panel. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you, San-Hui, for the great introduction you made earlier. I'm Mohammad Farahani, founder and CEO of Sepure. At Sepure, we are actually replacing energy-intensive chemical separation processes in different industries with a sustainable nanofiltration technology that helps industries like food, pharma, petrochemical, semiconductor, and oil and gas to reduce their energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions by 90%. And save 30 to 50% on their operating costs for those chemical separation processes. So we're using new types of nanofiltration membranes that are chemical resistant, and these membranes are able to replace thermal processes with a room temperature process. That's why they can actually save a lot on the energy consumption. So basically, in a short sentence, if I want to summarize, we're helping industries to be more sustainable by helping them reduce their energy consumption and pollution, and also the operating cost.
Si-Hui, perhaps I will send the next question to you, and if you could elaborate a little bit more on what are the challenges that regular programmers face when switching to a quantum-based system, And basically, what tools does Horizon provide to sort of bridge that particular gap in knowledge and expertise?
Yeah, understanding quantum computers is challenging. Yeah, and it requires a lot of knowledge to be able to use the specific algorithms that will improve quantum computing. On top of that, there are also very few, people who understand how to make those algorithms. So we are building tools that can automate this process, and so that we can compile the source code directly from conventional code, and our users will not have to have that kind of specialized knowledge on quantum computing or quantum algorithms. So that's how we are circumventing this challenge to using quantum computers. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yuichi-san, perhaps a question on, Chiyoda represents a large multinational energy company. Really, how important is sustainability as part of your overall strategy? And really, how do you reconcile this being a public listed company with shareholder demand for profitability?
Okay. Actually, last year we redrafted our corporate vision and strategy, and we put more emphasis on sustainability. And actually, sustainability is now not a part of our strategy, but the main pillar. And as you know, more and more companies, like even energy companies, are putting more importance on the sustainability. So they are our clients. So we have to change ourselves more to keep think about sustainability. And as I said, we have technologies like hydrogen carrier, and also we have some technologies about carbon dioxide capture, utilization and storage, CCUS. We call it carbon recycling in Japan, but CCUS. So if we can contribute to the world about decarbonization by spreading utilizing our technology, it can be our main business field, and we can contribute to the sustainability. And so we want to expand our business, especially about hydrogen, into the whole world by building new supply chains in the world. At the same time, profitability issues. Now, actually, sustainability is kind of necessity for business. So we have to seek for profitability under that condition. And at the same time, I'm sure these fields, the market will expand, definitely expand. Of course, it may take time, years, to be kind of tangible market. But if we can keep our competitiveness or technologies during those periods, I'm sure we can get profitability at the same time sustainability. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now moving to the other end of the spectrum, I mean, Chiyoda Corporation, huge public listed company. And one day SEPURE is likely to get there, but at the moment it is not quite there yet. So Farhani, what is the value proposition of your company, which is built upon the basis of sustainability? And are there commercial benefits to be derived from sustainability at this early stage in the company's development?
Yeah. So yeah, I believe sustainability always comes with commercial benefits. It's not separated thing. So if a company can actually reduce its energy consumption or reduce the waste using our product, obviously it can actually save some money there. Besides, less energy consumptions means less CO2 emission, and then so eventually they need to pay less carbon tax when the countries put stricter environmental rules. And other than that, sustainability itself can greatly influence the company's image and also branding positively, so which results in commercial benefits. So these days, a lot of people are looking whether like this brand or that brand, are they doing sustainable or good thing for the world, and they will decide whether they buy anything from them or they don't do any business with them. depending on that. So it becomes more and more important for the people, for the companies, and I think it's always connected with commercial value.
In your opinion, what is the general acceptance level of the market for for sustainable solutions such as those that you provide?
So since we actually bring both commercial value and environmental value to our customers, so the acceptance of a new technology like this is quite high, and for us, it makes it easier to sell to those markets. But for big companies, they look at the sustainability even more than the savings on the operating costs, because eventually they all have some goals to achieve by certain years. They want to reduce their carbon emission, they want to reduce their energy use and all these things. So for a lot of big companies, it's even more important that the saving on their operating cost even.
Okay, thanks. So earlier this year, Chiyoda Corporation, together with Mitsubishi Corporation, entered into an MOU with 5 Singapore companies: Citigas, Jurong Port, PSA International, Sembcorp Industries, the Singapore LNG Corporation, to develop a sustainable hydrogen economy in Singapore. Now, Yuichi-san, why is hydrogen considered the fuel of the future, and why is there such interest in it? What can it potentially do that as fossil fuels cannot?
Okay, actually, hydrogen has many features. First, it doesn't emit any CO2 upon use, and also hydrogen can be produced by many kinds of sources, like electrolysis from renewable energies, or even reforming from the hydrocarbon, and so on. So it can be produced in various countries or regions in the world. So it's kind of diversified. At the same time, hydrogen can produce electricity, of course, by like a gas turbine power plant. But at the same time, it can produce heat, which is very important for industries such as steel or cement, which needs a lot of energy to produce their products and emit a lot of CO2 now. And also mobility, such as especially big mobility like truck and bus or ships. So hydrogen can be used for those industries. And if humankind need to reduce the CO2 by half, well, hydrogen may not be needed so much. But if we have to seek for zero emission, we definitely need hydrogen. Of course, we need more CCUS and other, it's kind of combination of various technologies, but hydrogen is definitely needed to attain zero emission. So now Singapore government has made a long-term low emission development strategy. So we are very glad to take part in and contribute to the successful attaining of this strategy in Singapore. So we hope we can develop the study with Singaporean companies and Singapore government and develop more technologies and contribute to it.
Thank you very much. Sihui, I'm going to ask you a question that's probably a little bit wider than, but definitely I'm going to ask you a little bit more about the industry that you're in. Quantum technology. I mean, everyone you speak to says it's still nascent. What potentially can quantum technology do? And honestly speaking, where are we today? Is it something where we can see something happening, mass adoption within the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so quantum technology, that is technology that's enabled by quantum mechanics, has come a long way since the inventions of lasers and GPS. So in case we have a broad audience today, so in case for people out there who doesn't know, lasers and GPS actually is a type of quantum technology. But today when we talk about quantum technology, we are usually referring to a general purpose quantum computer, the sort that at Horizon we are trying to enable. A general purpose quantum computer can potentially do far more than what lasers and GPS can, because those are application specific. A general purpose quantum computer can speed up algorithms for machine learning and search, ensure unconditional security for delegated computation, and simulate efficiently other quantum systems such as large organic molecules. All those are important applications for logistics, finance, chemistry, and pharma. In fact, quantum computing is often seen as being specifically applicable to these industries due to existing algorithms having limited domains of application. But at Horizon, our goal is to make quantum computing more widely available by taking these existing programs and automatically accelerating them, as I mentioned before. And we believe that this will open up a broader range of use cases. Specifically, we think that it can be applied to computational fluid dynamics, which is of relevance to aerospace, automotive, and renewable energy. Complex electromagnetic simulations, which is relevant to electronics and telecommunications, and geophysical calculation, which is of relevance to the energy sector. I guess to answer the last part of your question, which is where is quantum tech today? So honestly, at the moment, we're still quite some time away from having such a general purpose quantum computer. But there are a lot of hardware and software innovation, and we are getting closer and closer. So for example, one of the major breakthroughs happened last year in 2019, where Google demonstrated a quantum processor, so hardware, which may have crossed the threshold where it no longer can be simulated easily by conventional computers. So it would take conventional computers a lot longer to make that calculation, whereas the quantum computer can do that, within an exponentially shorter time. But there are still a lot of work to be done before the hardware can reach its full potential. So we probably wouldn't recommend anyone to go ahead and buy a quantum computer to solve business-related problems right now. But we do think that it makes sense for various industries to explore and identify what might be the impacts of quantum computing for them and start working on the use cases.
I'm gonna stay with you. I'm gonna ask you a question because I've spoken to a lot of quantum physicists, practitioners, people in the industry. None of them can really give me a straight answer to this question, which is, there are multiple configurations for quantum hardware. Some approach it from a trapped ion perspective, some do superconducting qubits, some look at photonics. None of them really come up and say there is this particular method, which is the one that everyone's going to adopt, and that's the pathway towards general quantum computing. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it speaks to how broadly quantum mechanics can be derived from, a benefit can be derived from. I think that when I first started my PhD, it was actually something that you probably haven't heard of, NMR qubits. So that at MIT, that was like the cutting edge technology. But that it has moved on since to superconducting qubits and trapped ions. There's also solid state ones like nitrogen vacancies, which are crystals. So I think my thought on this is that I think the reason that we cannot pinpoint one exact technology, my personal view is that there probably will be a combination of a few that will do different things. And I do believe that we have all the hardware parts that can come together to make it work for applications, and we just have to get it connected and figure out how to use them.
Okay, thanks, Wei. And Rani, I think I'm going to be asking you a little bit about the technology, the secret sauce behind your filtration technology. How is it better than other filters? Why is it better? How do you do it, basically?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you a little bit of background. Like 40 years ago, when reverse osmosis membrane came to the market, they replaced distillation for water desalination. And since then, we have this conventional polymeric membrane that are designed for water application. But these membranes are not chemical resistant. So if you put them in contact with organic solvent, they will immediately dissolve or swell. So we cannot use these type of commercially available membranes for chemical separation application. So CPU's membrane has exceptional solvent resistance, and in contact with organic solvents, it remains unchanged. So we can use them to replace the current distillation processes that involve solvents. In short, we actually have robust and chemical resistant membrane, which allowed them to be used in harsh, chemical separations, unlike the other commercially available membranes. SEPU's solvent-resistant membrane is a nanofiltration membrane, which can do the separation at the molecular level. So we have pore sizes of around 1 nanometer or less than 1 nanometer. So it only allows certain molecules like solvents to pass through. So we can actually have very precise separations for applications in semiconductor, in petrochemical, in pharmaceutical, and in food industry. So we also don't use heat in our process. So it makes innovating new products that are vulnerable to heat easier. So yeah, these are the things.
But since are you able to customize your filters for different types of solvents, or is it probably a one-size-fits-all kind of thing?
So we can have like a catalog that contains, a list of product that contains 6 or 7 products that can actually be used within all these industries and for all these applications. Depending on the application, we can choose either of them or a combination of them to do the job.
And which industries are key for you at this moment?
Currently, we are focusing on vegetable oil, but we have customers in semiconductor and oil refinery, so crude oil refinery. So, but I think we are going to stick a little bit more into the food industry in general. So it can be other than the vegetable oil. So maybe some valuable extracted products for cosmetic, maybe for pharmaceutical or nutrition, and also cannabis oil, which is these days, there are a lot of demand for pharmaceutical application. So,
okay, Yuchi-san, you have already stated some of the benefits of hydrogen as a fuel, as a clean fuel, which is probably the only way in which we are going to get reach zero emission goals. What do you think are the main barriers to the wider adoption of hydrogen energy at the moment?
Maybe still very high cost of hydrogen. Especially blue hydrogen with from hydrocarbon with CCUS, or green hydrogen much higher. And at the same time, the infrastructure. So we need some investment to make the infrastructure of the hydrogen use in the society. And so we need more R&D to reduce the cost. And at the same time, investment to build the infrastructure. And above that, we need big demand to get the economy of scale to reduce the cost and rationalize the investment. But that kind of demand increase and cost reduction is kind of chicken and egg. So someone have to take a lead to make the breakthrough in the chicken and egg situation. And so we are now looking for big demand in the world, especially in this Asian region. And Singapore can be one of the good example because Singapore wants to make the society much cleaner, greener, and may need more hydrogen. So we are working together with Singapore.
So I will just stay with you and then follow on that particular question. You mentioned chicken and egg situation. What role can Chiyoda play to break that chicken and egg situation?
Well, our technology kind of links between the sources of hydrogen and consumer countries or consumer industries. And we want to make our cost as competitive as possible by introducing new technologies, as well as looking for good hydrogen source in the world, and at the same time, big demand in not only in Japan but in the world, in the region. So we're kind of linking forming a kind of supply chain or value chain. So we want to collaborate with upstream companies or government, and at the same time downstream companies or government, so that we can kind of form a strong chain, kind of big chain between the source and the consumption. So Chiyoda can kind of, we hope we can intermediate and kind of make a tube, become a tube of those 2 points and 2 ends, upstream and downstream.
And in your opinion, do you think that, I mean, you have talked a lot about infrastructure investment, you have talked about complex supply chains. Is there a role that startups can play in this, or is this an industry where startups probably should not be going into?
Of course, we need startups. Actually, we are now collaborating with startup. It's a kind of Australian startup which has a new technology, and we are now collaborating in kind of brushing up this technology at the same time scaling up the technology's applications. So and also, we are working with many startups in the field of digital technologies, for example, like AI or life science, because we make a pharmaceutical plants. At the same time, we have technologies of kind of molecular kind of thing, and so we have some experience with of collaborating with startups. So in this field of renewable energies, there are more and more startups coming up because of the many governments move to the zero emission now. So we hope we can get more opportunities to work with startups in the world. And quantum technologies, for example, that is very promising because we deal with big data in the plant, like simulating the plant and so on. So in the near future, we may need quantum technologies. At the same time, like a chemical process, like Dr. Mohammed is doing, that's very kind of in the that's the center of our business. Like our main business is still building hydrocarbon plant or pharmaceutical plants. So that kind of membrane filtering technologies, new technology is still needed, actually. So I hope in the near future we can collaborate.
Oh, thank you very much. I think the other 2 panelists are also excited to collaborate with you. That was not the intention of the panel, but this is definitely one of the positive outcomes for it. So I suppose the question to Farhani and Suhui, and probably Farhani, I'll ask you this first. You guys have described very complex cutting-edge technologies. What are the challenges you have faced in getting your technology understood by the market, by the stakeholders, even investors, for instance?
Yeah, so I think we have less difficulty presenting our technology to the end user, considering that they already deal with the chemical separation and conventional process. And once we describe the benefits that we can actually bring to their process, they already understand it, and they already were looking for these kind of separation processes. But when it comes to sharing the technology with a large group of people from different backgrounds, as you mentioned, investors or shareholders or even public, so it becomes quite difficult sometimes to make sure everyone understands how the technology works. But instead, we choose to talk more about the benefits that it can bring, while we replace the conventional processes with membrane technology. So then in this case, we understand that people are more interested to know, once we change the conventional process to new technology, what will happen to the world and how they can be benefited. I mean, as in case of energy saving, in case of sustainability, and also profit.
So if we were to sort of extend that what you've just said, let's say the customers understand your technology and all that. What are the challenges you have then faced in getting it finally adopted by them in terms of actually implementing it in their systems? Because yours is one where you literally have got to change the filtration systems, the flanges and all that.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So the system separation system or operational unit that we have to actually implement is different from what they already have. So they're eager to work with us, but since we don't have any commercially implemented separation process with our membranes, so it has to be in steps. So the sales cycle or implementation cycle is gonna take longer. So we have to do it in phases. So for example, the pilot scale, then we go to semi-industrial scale, and then once they see the data at semi-industrial scale, they are going to actually be convinced to go to industrial scale and make the big investment. So I believe for a first few customers going to be the case, but eventually once we have like some reference customers that successfully we implement the technology at the industrial scale, then for future customers, there will be no first and second phase, and we directly can go to the industrial scale implementation. But for a while, it's going to be that way, and that is the challenge, because it stops us from getting more revenue sooner than we expect. Yeah.
Okay, what about yourself, Sihui? I can imagine, quantum computing is hard enough to understand as it is. Trying to communicate that, and link it or align it with a commercial outcome is going to be even more challenging. What are your experiences on that?
Yeah, I think so personally, I think trying to explain quantum computing is quite difficult, especially if somebody doesn't have physics. But I think a lot of what we are motivated to do at Horizon is basically to address this challenge, right? Because we are, we want people to be able to use quantum computers and be just as excited as we are about quantum computers. And the tools that we're building will enable our customers to use them. But of course, coming back to this, the thing about adoption, we still expect to see some challenges because I guess Iuichi-san has mentioned that big data, right, like computation, crunching data. So people actually do understand that crunching big data is quite computationally expensive. But also, energy expensive, right? Because it takes a lot of power to run those servers that is needed to crunch big data. But I think in terms of moving to a new technology like quantum computing, the challenge is to establish the culture, just like with high performance computing in the STEM and developer communities, to add quantum computing tools to the suite of tools that they're already using to solve problems. I think part of the problem is that quantum computing is still new and relatively unproven, but it's still a tool, but there's still traditional methods that work, but they're a lot slower. I think that the thing is that when there will be problems that conventional computers cannot solve just because it takes so long to solve them. So it's impossible to use the computers we have now to solve them. And that's where switching to quantum computers will be actually inevitable. And until then, potential customers might be reluctant to use a new technology. So I think this is a challenge to widespread adoption.
Well, I suppose that there is no, that there's no gold at the end of the rainbow unless there's some pain along the pathway, I suppose. Okay, I'm going to pose a question, and I think it's going to set me up because we are technically government-backed organization. But this question came up in the Q&A, and it was one of the questions on my mind as well. And I think I should pose this opportunity for the three panelists to let me know what you think the role of government can be in speeding up or accelerating adoption of, in Iuichi-san's case, hydrogen economy, in Farhani's case, the better filtration techniques, Sihui's case, quantum adoption. Maybe I'll start with the lady first. Sihui, what do you think? What role do you think government can play in this? And I'm not saying that we can do it. I'm just asking, and we'll take it on advice. Sihui, you're muted.
Apologies. I thought I had unmuted myself. Yeah, with research, like government can play a role in accelerating adoption. So I think one thing is that we need a strong talent pool locally through education. So creating and funding degrees in PhDs and masters and talent programs to attract top international talent. But I think Singapore does this really well. So for example, just last week, the Business Times reported that the Economic Development Board of Singapore is launching a new tech pass that will allow 500 top foreign tech talents to come to Singapore without being pinned to any one company. The other thing is that government can pick up cutting edge technology with potentially long-term benefits and push for this paradigm shift, which is a challenge to widespread adoption. And I think Singapore also has done something visionary, which is that 12 years ago, even before everyone has heard of quantum computing, it has created this Center for Quantum Technologies, or CQT for short, which is now considered one of the top centers in this field. And that has led to a few spin-offs, like CQT has led to a few spin-offs, including Horizon, and made Singapore into a hotspot, a quantum hotspot. I think we also hear expectations from the private sector, like heavily regulated industries, to have proof of concepts and encouragements from government institutions. So this is where government can play a role in accelerating adoption of quantum technology through sandboxes and investment in tools or regulations. So such governmental sponsorship has occurred with development of the internet before e-commerce, internet streaming, etc. They're all backbones of our current economy, but even conceivable. There's also, I think I just want to bring up that there's also a need to avoid export restrictions on quantum technology, because this has become an issue in the coming years and is already affecting the United States.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Lue. I was just taking a note of that because that one is important, in fact, this export restrictions. Farhani, what are your thoughts on this? What can government do better?
Yeah, Sihui already mentioned a lot of good things that government already did. For example, the SGInnovate technology also was developed back in NUS using a $10 million grant from National Research Foundation of Singapore. So without that, the innovation wasn't there. So these are the good things that Singapore has already started doing. But for future, maybe what can be done is maybe changing some policies to push big companies even more to adopt sustainable technologies at a cheaper cost for them. So to reduce the risk of adopting new technologies by providing them with some grants, let's say if a technology is providing them with less CO2 emission or less energy consumption, this is at the end of the day beneficial to the country itself. So government probably can provide them with some grants to adopt the technology from the startups. So at the end of the day, the companies will be, will easier adopt the new technologies with having some incentives from the government, and the startups will actually easily start scaling up their production and adoption with these companies. So this is something that can really be helpful.
Okay. Well, thanks, Farhani. And Yuchi-san, I think I can only ask from a perspective of the Singapore government. What can the Singapore government do to perhaps accelerate the adoption of hydrogen as a fuel domestically? I can't pretend to speak on behalf of the Japanese government, so I'd better keep it to Singapore government at this stage.
Well, may I talk about government in general?
Oh yeah, I can talk about government in general. That would be good.
Government has many roles, and first, government should set a kind of long-term commitment with numerical goals, hopefully by sectors or hopefully by energy sources and so on. And I'm sure Singapore government is now trying to do that. And at the same time, to demand, to create big demand. As I said, it's kind of chicken and egg situation. So to create demand, just as Dr. Muhammad said, we need some kind of incentive especially in the early stage of the adoption to the society, and some regulation. At the same time, deregulation, because there are many regulations from the for the new energy sources. So we need a deregulation, and of course, support to the R&D. We need to keep it in a continuous way. At the same time, in our case, we are trying to build kind of global chain or international chain. So we need support from both sides. I mean, both governments. So we hope they will keep good relations with each other actually, so that we can make kind of smooth business and we can get support from both sides in a sense.
Okay, well, I think it's quite clear. I'm glad that at least the Singapore government is doing some things well, and good feedback. I've taken down some notes and I'll feed it back to the relevant agency that oversees it, and hopefully things will be done. I suppose the last question before we look at the overall Q&A from the audience would be, how has COVID-19 affected your company's plans? Maybe Farhani, I'll start with you. How has COVID-19 affected SEPURE's plans, your growth projections and all that?
So initially, with the lockdown that we had in Singapore for 2 months, it stopped us from coming to the lab. So a lot of our projects, was delayed because of the closure we had. But eventually, on the customer side, we experienced a good thing because COVID results in more sales for us and more pilots and trials. Because I think the customers already understand that they need a more sustainable solution to reduce their cost and operating costs, and eventually they have to replace their current processes. So that's why they became more serious in adopting new technology that helps them to be more sustainable. So, and then they were even faster, in closing the deals with us, and it was a good, after lockdown, it was a good days for us in case of having more pilots. But on the other side, we are seeing some delays in receiving or raw materials and this kind of stuff from the suppliers, because some countries are affected badly.
And Yuichi-san, has COVID-19 affected your plans for the hydrogen business?
Well, yeah, actually, after the COVID-19 happened, early spring and early summer, we were kind of wondering how the direction will go, which way to go regarding the hydrogen or renewable energies, because many governments are now suffering from the budget deficit because of the COVID. But now we see that many more and more governments are now committing themselves to the decarbonization, actually. So more governments or more people are now aware of the need of the tackling the challenge of global warming. So it's kind of strong following, and Japanese government announced that they will set a goal of zero emission in 2050. So also in Japan, in the world, we have a strong following. But at the same time, the expectation is very high. But we need more time to make it commercialized. So there's a kind of gap between them. So we have to think with time frame how we can attain the goal by which way, which curve, or which trajectory. So it's kind of a good time, but at the same time, tough time.
That is the nature of the economy today. There are huge opportunities, but there are also big barriers that previously we did not encounter. And Sihui, I'll let you close off this particular session with your thoughts on how COVID-19 has affected Horizon's plans, either positively or negatively.
Yeah, I think we are quite fortunate because we had a smooth funding process whose discussions, the discussions for that funding process took place before COVID-19, and we extended our seed round despite the pandemic. At present, we are a SaaS company, so our focus is on completing the development of our software, and this development can be carried out remotely. So it's quite undisturbed by the pandemic. We have also started working with customers and active in pushing forward partnership talks, all remotely. And also we had our first revenue during our period. So I think we have been quite lucky in that sense that, we have progressed during this period and was relatively unaffected. But of course, it is definitely harder when everyone is working remotely and, traveling is not an option.
Right. Okay, so with that, I see that there are quite a number of questions on the Q&A section, and I'm going to start to ask the panelists, all of you, some of these questions. Some of them are very specific to one speaker, some of them are more general. And I will try to go in order of the upvotes that they have had. If it makes sense. I suspect that the first question sounds like it's going to be for Mr. Yuichi-san. And the question from is, Japan recently announced that the country aims to be carbon neutral by 2050, along with a lot of other corporations as well. What are the key technologies that can help Japan and other like-minded countries achieve this ambitious goal? Yeah, so I mean, hydrogen definitely was, you probably have mentioned. Is there anything else that they do?
Yes, as you can see in the IEA report from IEA and other organizations, to attain the zero emission, we need a kind of a composition of various technologies or various solutions. And of course, energy efficiency is a big kind of energy efficiency is one of the renewable energy, actually. I mean, it's a new energy in a sense. So it's still very much needed. And at the same time, renewable energies like solar or wind, they are of course needed. And Japan is also trying to develop offshore wind power. And at the same time, we need hydrogen. At the same time, we need biofuels, we need CCUS. And we need to emit some CO2 anyway, even in 2050. So we need some negative emission, and CCUS or more biofuels and biofuels and CCUS. That kind of technologies are all needed actually. And we have 30 years to go. So we need to develop it as soon as possible so that it can be applied to the society in the 2030s or 40s.
Okay. I've got another question. I think it's going to be for the three of you. Whoever wishes to answer can sort of jump in. It's a little bit off what you guys are specialized in, but it extends from one of the factors that was discussed, which is the data centers, building of AI models and all that consumes a lot of energy. These are not sustainable, and then there's this whole movement towards green data centers, towards building more energy efficient AI chips, such that you don't consume so much energy. How are your companies looking to solve this, if at all? Are you in that particular space of trying to address these challenges? Anyone, Suhui, Ichi-san, Farhani, whoever wishes to jump in.
I guess I can jump in with a sort of a broader answer to this question. I think when we look at these problems they have today, a lot of it, is tied to being, a lot of the solution is probably tied into finding more efficient solutions. Just like for hydrogen, it doesn't emit carbon and stuff like that. But also, if things like creating fertilizers take us a lot of energy, right? And finding new ways to do that. So innovation can help solve that. I like to quote like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, like innovation, supporting technological development, research and innovation is part of their goals, as they consider it one of the forces for sustainable development. So if we take a look at COVID, right? So digital transformation is has helped people adapt to the Black Swan event. So I think, you know, if we could help innovation along to find more efficient algorithms, that can help solve the problem. But of course, this is a very high level answer to that question, right? But we're talking about extremely high level human problems.
Something?
So, Yuchi-san, you want to say something?
Yes. Yes. Actually, yes. Digital technologies, of course, has two aspects: save energy, a lot of energy, by efficient way of doing business, for example. At the same time, consume electricity. And I hear that many data center business, they are now looking for renewables, of course, and clean energy sources, so that they will not emit so much emission. So at the same time, so we can provide that kind of technology to those data center business. And also in Singapore, some companies are now thinking about that kind of thing, I hear. So in the future, we may find some good solutions. At the same time, in that sense, LCA, kind of life cycle assessment of the emission, is kind of important. And of course, there are many projects going on in the world. And in the future, we have to think about, we have to be aware of the importance of the LCA in any kinds of solutions.
Farhani, do you want to say anything at this point? No?
No, I think it's not related to actually what we are trying to do.
Okay. No problem. Another question that has come in is, I think this is more for Yuchi-san, because there is this question about, when using and storing hydrogen, does this consume a lot of energy? So, I mean, this is not just about, the use of hydrogen. Does it consume a lot of energy? Does it need to be stored at a certain temperature, which of course then means energy has got to be expended? I think the question really centers around what is the genuine carbon footprint of the hydrogen as a fuel, manufacturing, storage, and use. Yeah.
Okay. So there's several systems of carrying hydrogen, and our system is one of them. Another one is liquefied hydrogen or ammonia, and each process needs some energy, certain energy in some part of the process. And in our case, we need energy in the dehydrogenation process at the end. I mean, to extract hydrogen from the substance. And so we are now trying to improve the process by, for example, we need heat to dehydrogenate for the catalyst to work. So we are now starting to make a research about inputting our substance into the fuel cell and generate electricity at the same time, utilize the heat, or put hydrogen into the gas turbine and take the heat from the turbine, so improve the efficiency of the system. And also from the hydrogenation process, we are now trying to develop new technologies to make the process more efficient. So it will reduce increase the energy efficiency, at the same time decrease the cost. So we're in the process.
Okay. I'm just going through the questions again. Probably, well, I'm just going to ask this question. I think this general question more for those that are based in Singapore. Question is that, as a city-state, Singapore has many limited resources which cannot be harnessed from our own our own hinterland. As such, it just jumped in and I have to go and find it again. Where is it gone now? As such, how do you propose that we can overcome strategies? How do we achieve strategies such as, the 30-30 food? I'm not sure if you are familiar with that. Is being able to produce 30% of our food in Singapore domestically by 2030. I mean, Singapore has limited resources. I suppose it's a question of both intellectual resources as well as natural resources. Do you have a broader thoughts on that, Farhani, or having seen what our ecosystem is like?
This is a really tough question. So there are a lot of innovations coming that helps people to achieve that. So a lot of small co-shared farms and all these things can be quite helpful achieving these kind of goals in future. Mm-hmm. But I think Singapore overall is moving towards that, but the details and how we can achieve that is something that I'm not expert in that area.
Sure. So you have any thoughts on that? If not, it's fine as well. I think it's a little bit broad-based and very general.
Yeah, it is a very tough question. And I'm not an expert in food production or growing and things, so it's hard for me to answer that. But I definitely think it's a very important question for Singapore.
Yeah, and I'm sure, if there's interest in answers to those questions or opinions on those questions, SGInnovate holds a lot of talks. There are going to be talks specifically around food sustainability, food science, and the like. So please do, I'm just doing a shout out to the other activities and panels that we have, but probably this one is a little bit not completely aligned with the topic. I'll take another question, which is, recently Japan is launching a $2 billion fund to decouple from China. And I don't think the term really means to decouple, probably a little bit more independence from China. Maybe a better way to put it. What can businesses and countries do to attract more opportunities from Japanese companies like Chiyoda, for instance? And I suppose, Yuchi-san, this is a question for you.
Well, yeah, as you said, my understanding that that fund is not aimed at detaching from China or something. No, Japan has very strong economic relationship with China, so it's not for detaching. What does word I can't find, but in this situation, the supply chains, global supply chain is kind of detached in many places. So we need to diversify the source supply chain. We need to kind of have something in Japan, for example, or in the near countries. So, but at the same time, I can't say specific business or some specific industries, but anyway, diversification is the key.
I think, Yuchi-san, I suppose if I can see the question a little bit more clearly now, I just found it again.
Okay, Japanese business.
Yeah, it's under the answer question.
I see.
They switch straight away to the other side. What can Singapore companies do to attract more attention? Companies like SetPure, companies like Horizon, do to attract more attention from Japanese companies, so that you know what they are doing. Yes.
Well, Singapore may not be suitable for manufacturing industries. Labor-intensive manufacturing industries anymore. But at the same time, you have many talents actually and technologies. And especially you have the kind of openness to invite various kinds of talents from all over the world. So in that sense, it's a very good opportunity for Japanese companies to make kind of some research laboratories, for example, or some high-tech industries, or some logistic hubs taking, mating from the location of Singapore. So there are that kind of global business opportunities in Singapore, I think. And many companies now have their Asian headquarters outside Japan, in Singapore, for example.
Mm-hmm. Farhani, there's actually a question for you. It got switched to the answered section, but I've just picked it up again. There are people in the audience who are circular economy practitioners who are in that industry. They want to know, how is SetPure's process contributing to the circular economy? you know, they feel that there's potential, but they probably would like your views as to how you're going to articulate this a little bit better.
Sure. So there are a lot of processes that we try to recycle and recover chemicals and high value products. So a lot of times the solvents that are already going to incineration in pharmaceutical application, we can basically recycle and reuse them. So we're eliminating the waste there, and we are recycling and reusing them for many cycles. And there are also homogeneous catalysts, which are very expensive. 1 gram can be about $100, and we have like many kilograms of those catalysts used in the industries. So then a lot of times the current processes are, you know, we'll waste most of these catalysts that we can actually using our membrane recycle and reuse them for many cycles. So these are the ways that we actually can contribute to circular economy by recycling and reusing.
Okay. I think there is a question for Sihui as well, very quantum related. And I'm just going to read it out for the benefit of all the audience. The question is, I understand that China and South Korea has built quantum network to start trial on quantum key distribution technologies for the banks in preparation of using quantum encryption to secure our money once quantum computing is ready. I'm curious whether Singapore has started on such a project for our financial sector, and if yes, at what stage are we at now? Sihui, I think probably this question is right up your alley.
Yeah, well, quantum key distribution has been a research topic, a hot topic actually, since the inception of CQT. I don't personally specialize in QKD, and I'm not involved with the experiments in Singapore, but I'm pretty sure they had an experiment in the early days of CQT. And recently, I was just checking up this, that there was an announcement that, you know, another QKD experiment has been performed at CQT, I think with Singtel. So yes, definitely, there are groups in Singapore who have performed this who had, you know, this quantum key distribution protocol performed. Whether or not it's with the financial sector, I'm not entirely sure about the details of the experiment.
I can probably share a little bit because we are also investors in a company called Spectral, which also came out of CQT, and they specialize in quantum key distribution. I don't believe that the stage at which they are at is such that you know, the banks are ready to adopt it, but definitely they are probably looking at the quantum internet, which was announced by the US. It's one of their key initiatives earlier this year. They are definitely looking at that as being one of the springboards to promote their product. So to my knowledge, at least, I think based on the investments we have made or the portfolio companies that we have, the fintech sector still is not yet QKD ready based on that. So I think we have sort of run out of time. I'd like to thank my 3 panelists. Do you have any last words you would like to say with regards to what you do, or anything you'd like to say to the audience before we wrap things up? Yuchi-san?
Okay, thank you very much for the discussion. As I said, we are open to collaborate with various startups in various fields, not only hydrogen, but also hydrocarbon or digital technologies, and so on, life science. So if you have any anything, please, you can contact the Agora, Science Agora office, but also you can find me in the SNS like LinkedIn or Facebook. So please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yuchi-san. Farhani, any last things you'd like to say?
Yeah, I would like to thank everyone and SGInnovate for inviting me for this great panel, and thanks audience for being with us for more than 1 hour.
So anything else you'd like to say?
Yes, I'd like to thank everybody for being here, and SGInnovate for inviting me on this panel. It's been very great discussing these topics. Also, we are interested in having interested in partnership talks with companies which may be interested in quantum technologies.
Okay, so with that, in fact, I would like to thank the three of you for taking up an hour plus of your time. I know you guys are very busy. You run businesses. It is not easy to be an entrepreneur. I know I was one before. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that it will lead to good partnerships and business opportunities moving forward. I'd like to thank the audience as well, for joining us. And with that, we'll just sign off. And do I hand it back to you, or?
No, it's fine, Xianhui. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and to our attendees, do keep an eye out for a post-event EDM with the event recording and ways to connect with our speakers. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Tan, Dr. Farahani, and Mr. Yuji for being here. Yeah, we hope to have you at future panels. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.